Hi guys and welcome to Angling For You. Today you join me on another lockdown video, and again we're out on the decking. Not so nice weather as it was as it has been for the week. Earlier on today on Easter Sunday it's been pretty good, but I think we're going to suffer a couple of days of dull weather, so I'm trying to get a few videos done so at least don't make us feel too dreary being inside if that's the case. But good news is that weather's coming back and we're going to have a nice week with sun, even though we're still locked in, of course. So enough mumble. What we're doing today, we're going to go on to follow the trend of the shallow rig that I did on the previous video, and it's going to be the Jigga Rig. So obviously the Jigger itself, we'll just find it because I think I've put it in my drawer. Yes, we have. So the Jigger itself was shown on when I did the ProGen tackle. It's an absolutely devastating float for shallow fishing. There's a few reasons why, and what we'll do is we'll put the rig together and we'll tie everything. We're going to tie the line as one and no hook link this time. This is not necessarily the way that everybody does a Jigga rig, but it's the way I do it. So we're just going to go through that, and then at the end we'll talk about how it's fished and why, and what is the difference between this and fishing a Jigga float and a standard sort of little diamond float or whatever sort of shallow float that we were doing last time. So what we'll do is we'll get sorted and we'll get to time. Okay guys, the Jigga. So as you can see, we've got one with an orange tip. It doesn't matter too much, it's the methodology about the actual rig which is important. You can get them from ProGen in the yellow or the orange. I've got both. This one we're going to do as an orange, as most of the time that's what I fish with. We'll go into the mechanics of the rig in regards to how it works once we've put that rig together. I might even get a top kit out and attach it and just show you how that works. But before that, what we'll do is we'll just get one tied. So I'm just going to put this one back in this drawer so it's out of the way. Now, ProGen Gen Pro line, I'm going with an 016, which is around just under £6 breaking strain, but the good thing about the ProGen line, the Gen Pro especially, is that it's super low diameter, which means you can get away with fishing heavier lines than you normally would do, and it's important to have not too much of a weak line when you're fishing a Jigga, and I'll explain this when we go through the rig, but you do need it to be sort of quite a stiff line for allow the float to slide. Now, like I was saying before, we're going to have to cut this piece of line. We can't keep it out on the whole spool as we did with yesterday's shallow rig. Now that's because we're going to be doing a knotless knot, and we're going to be putting on a band on the end. So for that hook to be threaded through as a knotless knot, we need to do that. So before we do cut it off, we're going to tie a band. So obviously I've got a video doing this in detail, so I'll go through it, but not in as much detail as I was when we did the original one, which you can find on the lockdown videos. So we've got the end of the line and we're just passing that through the rubber band. Now, like I did before, it's a simple overhand granny style knot is how I attach it. There's other people may have their own ways of doing it, and blood knots or doubled over knots or water knots or whatever they want to do, that is absolutely fine. For this one, for me, I do the same knot every time. Every so often you'll use a band because they do degrade, but I never lose the knot. It's tied down tight, and that is now tied on the line. I'm going to get the scissors and just snip off the tag end, which is this end, to allow us that little neatness. Flick that out of the way and we can see the bands on. Now this is what I mean by, now this other end of the line is still attached to the spool, so when we're doing a Jigga it's about searching the water, and you can fish it unbelievably shallow. Now a lot of people do have hook links on there, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. If you want a hook link on there, that's no problem. I personally don't, and that just gives me the ultimate to go as shallow as possible. Some venues have around a 6-inch curfew, if the right word, that you can go up to, and you can't go any shallower than that. Some venues aren't too fussed as long as you're not fishing on the surface, but you can literally go up to the bottom of the float if you needs be, when we'll explain that to you. So what we'll do now is we'll get the hooks out. I'm just going to pull this line, and I'm only going to give myself probably about 2.5 foot, and that's really more than you need, and it just gives you a little bit to work with, but we're not wasting too much of it. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, and then, as I said before, you need to look at what you're going to use. Now, I'm a big fan of the PR36 or the KKMB or the MCMB. Now, I haven't got any in an 18, and a lot of times if you fish a jigger, you use a 4 or 6 mil pellet, and I like to use an 18s hook. You can use a 16s hook, but the only one I've got is the MCM for that, and I do like those hooks, but for the jigger fishing I do like the straighter shank on the hook, and you know, that's just how I fish. So I have got some of the hair riggers, and these are 18s from Drennan, which I'm going to use today instead of the KKMB, which I would normally use. So, as always, when you're doing a knotless knot, you need to go through the back of the eye, and what we're going to just do is slide that all the way down, and I'll pull it back into focus in a second. I'll pull that all the way down to the band, like so. So hopefully you can see that on camera, but it's right to the band, and again, we're just having a look, we're just stretching that little piece of line between the band and the eye, just so the band sits on the bend of the hook, and then we pinch it as we did before. Like I say, I've got a video on this on the lockdown series, so if it's going a little bit fast for you today, it's in more detail inside the lockdown series. So the first one is always the awkward one, and we just need to get a wind onto the shank of the hook, and once you get one wind on, all the others go on. A little bit fiddly out with the wind today. Just gonna grab it in my other hand. Sometimes it's just a little bit fiddly to get the first one on, and we've got the first one on. We're just gonna go round the shank probably 7 or 8 times, depending how long the shank of the hook that you're using, and we've just gone down, and now we're trapping that line, and we're just tracing it all right back to the start. And it's a bit more awkward with this one because we're not doing a hook link, and then we need to pass that back through the eye like so. So now we've got the main line back through that eye, and we pull it, remember, we pull it right down until we're getting right near the loop, which you can see there, and that's when we put a little bit of moisture on there. Always good to moisten your knots, they'll pull down tighter. That's absolutely bob on, nice and tight, perfect presentation. The band's just sitting off the edge, which means we can get a 6 mil on there, or we could get a 4 mil on there. Absolutely perfection. So now that's tied, I'm just going to run it through my fingers so you can see it going. You can see that the line there all the way to my fingers, so we've got around 2.5 foot of line. The next thing we need to bring into the scope is something a little bit different to what we had before. Now, you can do this with your shots, and your shots can be the marker, and that is absolutely no problem. But I like to have a float stop, then my stots, and then I like to have my float. So these little float stops, if you've never used them, or feeder beads, whatever you want to call them, you can get me various different colours. Mine obviously in black. You just thread your line through the loop, and don't pull too much line through, and once you've pulled it through, so it's on there like that, you can see the tag, just pinch your line together, like so, and just slide one of these beads off like that, and you'll see now it's on the main line, but you still got the tag, so you need to pull it the length until it goes past the tag end, like so. And now you see that the tag's off, and now that is on the line, and you can see that against my hand a little bit better, and that now moves up and down the line, and that's where you alter the depth, which we'll go into. So we're just going to slide that out of the way, so we don't need that absolutely at all at the moment. I'm just going to open my drawer and get the jigger out and put that on there, and I'll put this these float stops back in my bag. So we don't, oh, actually we do need one more of them, so I'll just leave them on that bench. It's just a bit windy out here, guys, so I'm just chasing things a little bit around the decking. So float wise now, obviously we're now coming up through the bottom of the float. So this is the top, this is the bottom, we're coming up through there because this is the end we're going to tie the loop on, because we've tied the knotless knot on the other end with the band. So that hook is already on there, it's not a hook link, it's already on there. So what we need to do now is thread that jigger onto the line. So just simply push the line through, and you can see it's come through the top there. Just pull that line, nice and simple, and that'll just rest on that stop, on that float stop. You can see I just drop it down again and it sits onto there. We'll go more into that later on. We're just going to put on another bead. So nice and simple again. Get the top end of the line when the wind stops blowing it out your hand, and again we've got the stops, the float stops on there. We thread the line through the band, through the metal loop, pinch that line on the other side like so, slide one of those beads off that loop and onto this line. As you can see, again it's on the line, and we'll just keep sliding that bead, look, like so, until like that it drops off the tag end, and you can just remove that, and again you've got that piece of line there, and that float stop is on the line as we did last time. So it's on there, and again we're just going to slide that on a little bit, and then at the top, before we go on to stots, we normally put 2 number 8s on. I normally put 2 number 8s on, and that's usually about bob on. It sometimes takes 3. We can adjust that when you get to the venue. So again, just about putting a loop in there. I'm putting quite a big loop in there. I know I'm going to shorten it, which makes it easy for getting on and off, and I will show you, if you're wanting to get it off the pole tip a lot easier, then you can tie the same loop again inside the main loop. So you've got just how you tied the first one, so you've got that's the first loop there. We're just pinching that first loop. You need to make quite a big loop to start off with though, and then you want to follow the same process as you did before, and pass that loop through like so. It creates a little loop inside of your big loop, and then one more time just to secure it. It can be a little bit fiddly because you don't want too big of a first loop, but you just need to be able to create that second loop. So there you go, it's pulled tight on there, and I'll show you why that's important when we get the top kit out to have a look at. Just snip that excess line off, and you can snip that off further if you want, but at most 9 times out of 10 you will be messing about with it when you get on your peg. So going back to the float itself, so the float's back on there to that stopped. I'm just going to put 2 number 8s just above that float stop. So we've got the ProGen Schlots again. Like I say, real big fan of them. The khaki green colour, I just think they work so well in the water, and I'm just going to nibble 2 of these on, probably off camera because they're a little bit fiddly, so just bear with me 2 seconds. Probably should have put my glasses on for this little bit. Right guys, so I've stuck 2 slots on now, and they're both together. And what we can do is slide that float stop just up there for now. You don't have to have that bottom float stop on. You can use the shot itself, and it won't make a difference when I explain it and I stick it onto the actual pole itself. That will make more sense. So you can see there, it's hanging against there, and it really is as simple as that. What we'll do is come off camera, I'll get the top kit out, I'll attach it, we'll show you that connection of attachment, and we'll explain how it works. Right guys, so we've got ourselves a top kit, and we've got ourselves the Jigga Rig. So as you normally do, open the main loop, not the little tiny loop that we've created at the top. Open the main loop, and as you would normally for a Dacron, and create a bend in the line and pass that little loop, that main line loop through it as you normally would. Attach it to your Dacron and pull down as you would normally. Just wiggle that knot and that's it, it's tight on there. Now this is where the loop comes in. Now I've done this on other videos, but if you haven't seen it, it's a really good tip, and especially if you're cold or your fingers are a bit numb, this works brilliantly. So normally you have to pull the line, and it works better on lighter lines as well. So if you were normally taking that off that Dacron, you would push the line back on itself and that would slide it off, but it sometimes can be a bit fiddly. So if you just grab this extra loop that you've done and just pull it, that's it, straight off. It's that simple. It really is that simple. And we'll show you that in, if you can see it. So you've got your main loop, and then you've got a little tag loop. You can make that tag loop smaller if you want, and we'll show you it one more time. So as you normally would, I'm going to put that top kit down 1 second. There we go. So as you normally would, you make that attached, you make a loop in your main line, and you pass that through that big loop, which creates the loop which you put over your Dacron, and then remove your fingers, keep hold of that Dacron and pull that tight. So that's now on as it was before. Slide that knot to the top, so that's on as you would done to do before. So to remove it, grab that little loop and pull, and it literally comes off that easy. That's just a really quick tip on how that works. Now what I'm going to do now is put that back on, because I need to show you how the rig works itself, because this and because this hook's so sharp, it keeps hooking me and hanging on to myself. So just bear with me 2 seconds. We'll put this back on, and then we can go through the rig itself. So that's back on now, and believe me guys, it won't come off unless you pull that little loop, and the chances of you pulling that little loop other than when intended are very slim. I've never done it ever. So I've just got some pellets with me, just so we can sort of better, make it more realistic on the video. So I'm just going to put this pellet on. Right guys, let's go how the jigger works itself. Bear with me, because I'm going to try and do this, and I'm hoping you can see. So you can see obviously everything that's there. Now the bottom part of the jigger, there is obviously there's a weight, and there is the bottom float stop. Now that can't go any shallower than that bottom is set. So for example, this is around 10 inches of depth, so that's where the float will go at its absolute minimum in the water. When we lower the float into the water, whatever the top float stop is the maximum depth that it's going to go. So my fingers are going to simulate the tension of the water, so we're hitting it in and we can lower that down, and you see the line goes up to that top float stop. And the reason that's so effective, and this is the motion of me moving this up and down, is the jigger float. And that's what you're doing. The float is sitting basically in the water and you're jigging the line. So if you've ever been sea fishing or you've ever been lure fishing, that's what you're doing. You're aggravating that bait to come up and flutter back down, come up and flutter back down, without the float doing anything. It just stays there, and the line, this is why I was saying about stiffer line. You need stiffer line, so you can ultimately alter it so fast. If you feel that they're shallower than that, you can put that bottom one down to 4 inches, 6 inches, depending on what your venue's allowed, and then move the top one down. And say you only want to search down to a foot, you can move the top one down so it's only a maximum of a foot, but you're always having a tight line to this for this method. So as you can see now, the line is tight from the top. It's always tight because that allows you to lower it through the water, and the fish intercept it and just swim off straight away because you're jigging it and aggravating that bait. You can still slap it over, but then when it's in the water, like I said, you can lower it up, bring it back up, down, and aggravate that bait, and that is why it's so devastating, and obviously does a ridiculous amount of match weights. And then couple that always with a really light elastic. Now this one's a Hybrid Fusion Orange. It's around a sort of an 8, and you want to be an 8 or a 10 really, nothing really more than that. I'm just going to put that back over here, but it's such an effective method, and effectively you're on a bolt rig. It's going to hook as soon as that fish takes that bait. It's going to pull it down to that bottom shot. You've obviously got a very tight line, and it's going to instantly, like you can see with it, or like you can see with the elastic, it's going to pull it straight out. And that's why it's so devastating and catches so many fish. And it's such a simple rig to build. You've literally got 2 float stops, 2 stops or shots, a float, your line and your hook. That is really that simple. If you want to put a hook link on so it can be interchangeable, that's absolutely great. All I'd say is make sure that they're really small loop to loops, because you're going to obviously be taking an absolute battering most of the times, and if you want to go shallower than your hook link, you can't really do that. But then if you've got a venue that's only a maximum of 6 inches of the minimum shallow you can go, then you can make that 6-inch hook link and you'll be sorted, and that's not a problem. And maybe I would do that if we're in a venue, but it's always good to have a couple of these set up. And the positivity is that you can just make that whatever depth you want, and you can search that water. So it's so easy to do that, and that aggravation, like I said, makes it an unbelievably deadly rig. And as soon as we can get out of lockdown, I will do some fishing on that. I have fished with it in the past, but I don't think I've actually done a video on it, which is quite surprising because I fish it all the time. So I will get that video done, and as soon as we get out of lockdown, and fingers crossed they'll be biting and they'll be shallow. But thank you for watching as always. I'll keep bringing. I've got 3 other float patterns to do. I may only do 2 of them because the other shallow one that I have is very similar to the original shallow one what was up yesterday, so the other 2 will be a little bit different to that. So yeah, thank you as always. Always remember to like and subscribe if you can. It really helps us out, and sharing it with your friends. We're here to make videos to help beginners and just give tips to anybody that wants to look and try and do something new within fishing. We try to cover all the bases that we can. If there's anything that you haven't seen that you'd like to see, and obviously we can do it within lockdown, or when we come out of lockdown, then we will certainly look at doing that to make sure that we're giving the videos to what the members want. That's the whole idea of the channel. So yeah, join us on the Facebook group where there's lots of things, live streams at the moment with the lockups every Friday at 7. Got an Ask Me questions on the Facebook group Angling For You, and on the Instagram angling_for_you is around 8 o'clock. So we usually do an hour on the Facebook group, and then me and Matt will jump on the Instagram around 8 o'clock every Friday, that is. So join us on that for sure, and thank you very much for watching. Hope everyone's keeping safe. Catch us on the next one. Tight lines.